A psychopath doctor kidnapped two girls and does a extreme and vulgar surgery, connecting their face to others' ass to make a human centipede. Stay tuned to know the full video. The movie opens with an ominous shot of Professor Joseph Haider, a former world-renowned surgeon. In his hand, he clutches a photograph. Three dogs stand eerily aligned, one behind the other in a grotesque display. Their positioning is unnatural, and as the camera zooms in on Professor Haider's eyes, his sinister obsession becomes disturbingly clear. As the professor stares at the image, the stillness of the night is suddenly broken by the low rumble of an approaching truck. The truck comes to a stop on the desolate road nearby. The driver, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows, steps out and heads into the woods, perhaps to relieve himself. Professor Haider's expression changes, cold calculations setting in. His hand moves to the glove compartment, retrieving a handgun with deliberate precision. Without hesitation, he steps out of the car, the shadows cloaking his movements. In one swift, merciless motion, he raises the gun and fires. The scene shifts abruptly to a more vibrant setting, a hotel room where two American friends, Jenny and Lindsay, prepare for a night out in Germany. The women, lively and carefree, have traveled to the country for a vacation, eager to explore its nightlife. That night, they plan to attend a party, but as they drive through the dense and unfamiliar countryside, their sense of adventure quickly fades to confusion. The tall, foreboding trees of the forest seem to close in around them as their rented car moves deeper into the wilderness. With no clear directions and night descending fast, their nerves start to fray. Their GPS fails, and when Lindsay tries to get more information over the phone about the party's location, the call drops. The signal is gone. The winding roads offer no clues to their whereabouts. Panic sets in, and just as Jenny attempts to make a U-turn, the car lurches violently. A loud pop echoes through the night. The tire has blown. Stranded in a pitch-dark forest with no phone service and no signs of life, the girls exchange worried glances, fear creeping in. They decide to flag down help. After what feels like hours, headlights finally pierce the darkness. A car approaches, and the women wave desperately, signaling for help. But as the driver slows, their relief is short-lived. An older man, hunched and grinning, leers at them from his window. His intentions are immediately clear. He taunts them with vulgar gestures and a string of lewd comments. Terrified, they lock their doors, hearts racing, as the man drives off, leaving them shaken and more vulnerable than before. With no choice but to seek help on foot, Jenny and Lindsay abandon the car and begin their trek through the woods, the towering trees and eerie silence amplifying their isolation. As they walk, the wind picks up, and soon a torrential downpour begins. Their clothes cling to their soaked skin as they trudge forward, desperate for shelter. Then, through the dense forest, they spot a faint glow, a light from a house in the distance. Hoping for salvation, they quicken their pace toward it. The mansion is imposing, its grand yet decaying exterior illuminated by the storm's flashes of lightning. They knock on the heavy door, soaked to the bone and shivering. After what feels like an eternity, the door creaks open, and they are met by Professor Joseph Haider. He stands tall and gaunt, his sharp features shadowed in the dim light. At first, he seems hospitable enough, offering them shelter from the storm. His voice, though soft and polite, carries an unnerving edge. Once inside, they notice the oddities around them. The house is sterile, too clean, devoid of warmth. Strange, macabre paintings adorn the walls. Distorted figures, anatomical sketches, and disquieting portraits that seem to follow them with hollow eyes. As they settle into the living room, Professor Haider's behavior grows subtly unsettling. He listens intently but avoids their eyes, asking probing questions about their trip, where they're from, and whether they are related. When they request he call a repair service for their car, he dismisses their concern, offering them water instead. As he leaves for the kitchen, the camera lingers on his back. We see him reach into a drawer, pulling out a vial and a syringe. He prepares 2 glasses of water, quietly stirring in a clear liquid. Returning to the living room, he hands the drinks to the unsuspecting women. Lindsay, exhausted, drinks hers without hesitation. Jenny, more cautious, notices something is off and discreetly sets hers down. Within minutes, Lindsay's vision begins to blur, her body heavy and unresponsive. She collapses onto the couch, while Jenny watches in horror. As she stands to confront the professor, he swiftly grabs a syringe and plunges it into her neck, the sedative knocking her unconscious almost instantly. When they awaken, the cold, clinical environment of the professor's lab comes into focus. Jenny and Lindsay are strapped to hospital beds, IVs in their arms. The smell of antiseptic fills the air. Their limbs are bound tightly, and panic sets in as they realize where they are. A third man, the truck driver from earlier, lies unconscious on a nearby bed. The professor enters, now fully embodying his deranged persona. His movements are calm, methodical, as he begins to explain, with chilling detachment, the details of his grotesque experiment. He calmly reveals his plan to surgically join them, mouth to anus, creating a human centipede. His voice is cold, clinical, as he describes how their digestive systems will be fused. Each person will be dependent on the other for survival in a horrifying chain of consumption and excretion. He shows them a crude diagram, the horror sinking in as he outlines the gruesome procedure. Desperation sets in. Jenny struggles against her restraints, while Lindsay lies helpless, the drugs still numbing her limbs. With teeth and sheer willpower, Jenny loosens her bindings. Blood pours from her wrists as she frees herself, fighting through the pain. Her heart races as she stumbles through the maze-like corridors of the mansion, every corner offering the possibility of escape or capture. Behind her, the professor is relentless, stalking her through the house. She crashes through a door and into a pool room, but the professor is already there, sealing her fate as the lights flicker out, shrouding the room in darkness. The next scene reveals both women back in the lab, their strength drained. The surgery begins. The professor works with grim precision, his scalpel slicing through flesh as the camera lingers on every agonizing detail. Their screams are muffled by the cold sterility of the room, echoing in the professor's mind like music. Days pass. The professor stands over his creation, admiring it like a twisted artist unveiling a masterpiece. The human centipede, 3 bodies fused into one, is a nightmarish sight. The Japanese man leads, followed by Lindsay in the middle, and finally, Jenny at the tail end. Their bodies are barely healed, the stitches raw and painful. The professor forces them to crawl, their movements agonizing and dehumanizing. He forces the Japanese man to eat, watching with grotesque fascination as the chain reaction unfolds. Lindsay in the middle is forced to consume his waste, while Jenny at the end weakens with every passing hour. Their bodies are breaking down. The professor's experiment is failing, but his madness only deepens. As the victim's condition worsens, 2 police officers arrive, searching for the missing tourists. Suspicious of the reclusive professor, they demand answers. He tries to drug them, but his plan falters. The officers' instincts kick in, and they begin to investigate the house, uncovering the horrors hidden in the basement. The final act is a chaotic confrontation of blood and death. The Japanese man, driven to the edge of sanity, finds the strength to strike back, stabbing the professor with a shard of glass. But it's too late. The professor, though wounded, fights back. The officers fall one by one, and in the end, the professor meets his demise, succumbing to the very madness that drove him. The movie closes on the horrifying sight of the human centipede, broken and dying. In the silence of the now empty house, there is no salvation, only despair. Comment down your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe the channel. We are so close to hit 400 subscribe, so hit it hard.